What would drive a struggling nation to provoke one of the most powerful navies in the world, risking everything on a dangerous show of force? Imagine the tension in the air over the South Caribbean Sea, the buzz of fighter jets slicing through the humid sky, their engines roaring like thunder as they challenge an imposing warship below. This isn't just a drama of metal and firepower, it's a move loaded with deep political risk and potential fallout. Last month, tensions between Venezuela and the United States escalated sharply. A flotilla of U.S. Navy vessels anchored near Venezuela's coast, part of a fierce campaign to choke off drug trafficking routes funneling narcotics into America. Then, on September 2, the U.S. escalated its efforts dramatically. A strike hit a vessel closely linked to the Venezuelan cartel known as Tren de Aragua. The attack shattered the ship on the open sea, erasing 11 lives tied to a criminal network accused of horrific crimes, all under the shadowy control of Venezuela's current leader, Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. president at the time took to social media, broadcasting a video of the blast and warning smugglers worldwide, "This is the cost of crossing the line." In the aftermath, U.S. officials hinted more decisive actions could be in motion. "Maybe it's happening right now," was the chilling suggestion from the Secretary of State, hinting at relentless pressure on these cartels. Yet, across the sea, Maduro fired back, rallying his militias and branding Washington's moves as violent attempts at regime change. Demanding respect for his nation's sovereignty amidst rising fears and uncertainty. Then came the stunning gamble. On September 4, Maduro ordered 2 Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets to streak past one of the U.S.'s most advanced warships, the USS Jason Dunham. This was no ordinary vessel, named after a war hero who sacrificed his life to save comrades in Iraq. The destroyer bristles with some of the deadliest firepower on Earth, ready to unleash missiles against threats from sky, sea, or land. What can explain Maduro's daring decision to provoke a massive naval force with just 2 jets? The answer lies buried in history and desperation. Those same fighter jets, proud symbols of Venezuela's past alliance with the U.S., were purchased decades ago when relations between the nations were far friendlier. Back in the early 1980s, Venezuela was the first South American country granted the privilege of flying these F-16 Vipers, receiving 24 jets loaded with cutting-edge missiles and navigation technology. Those machines once dominated the skies during moments of internal conflict, fiercely defending the government during an attempted coup in the early 1990s. But the years turned sour. As political winds shifted, Venezuela drifted away from the U.S., embracing ties with rivals instead. Trade embargoes cut off vital support and spare parts for those once mighty jets, forcing Caracas to rely on less orthodox channels. Whispers of black market deals, secret upgrades with foreign tech, and desperate maintenance efforts keep those aging fighters airborne. Today, only a handful of original F-16s remain operational, overshadowed by newer Russian-made fighters that have become Venezuela's preferred weapon in the sky. Still, Maduro's decision to send those old jets on a perilous flyby speaks volumes. It's both a statement of defiance and perhaps a miscalculated risk that could deepen his country's troubles. What lies ahead as these 2 nations continue their deadly dance on the Caribbean horizon? Will this bold challenge spark an even fiercer response? The engines thunder on, and the story is far from finished. Tensions between Venezuela and the United States have escalated dramatically, sparking a startling confrontation in the Caribbean. Venezuelan fighter jets, in a show of defiance, approached a U.S. Navy warship, asserting a bold stance that might backfire catastrophically. Why would Venezuela provoke one of the world's military behemoths? In late August, the United States deployed a fleet of warships to the South Caribbean Sea, targeting the notorious drug cartels funneling narcotics into America. On September 2, this operation escalated with a significant airstrike that obliterated a vessel linked to the Venezuelan cartel, known as Tren de Aragua. In this tragic strike, 11 lives were lost. This event unfolded while the criminals were traversing international waters, delivering drugs destined for the U.S. President Trump amplified the severity of the situation in a post, declaring, "This is a clear warning to anyone considering trafficking drugs into the U.S. Beware." His fierce rhetoric was bolstered by a dramatic video featuring the destruction of the vessel. Secretary of State Marco Rubio hinted at further military actions, stating, "Our operations will continue against drug cartels wherever they threaten U.S. interests." As days passed without further military encounters, animosity simmered on both sides. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro felt cornered and retaliated with a dangerous maneuver. On September 4, he commanded two F-16 jets to fly perilously close to the USS Jason Dunham, a formidable destroyer named after a brave Marine Corps corporal who sacrificed his life for others during the Iraq War. Such an act was not just a display of strength but a desperate gamble that could push them closer to conflict. The irony of Venezuela showcasing its might with American-made jets reveals the tragically warped relationship between the nations. Once allies who celebrated arms trades in the 1980s, the friendship turned bitter under the shadow of Hugo Chávez's regime, evolving into an impenetrable divide under Maduro. Now, amid ongoing economic turmoil and accusations of human rights abuses, Venezuela clings to some of its original fleet of F-16s. These iconic jets, emblematic of a different era, serve as both a source of pride and a reminder of a turbulent past. Despite being notably aged, rumors suggest Venezuela has sought to restore life to its fleet through the black market, attempting to keep their air superiority relevant. So, why did Maduro choose to escalate the situation now? The urgency hangs in the air, thick as smoke from jet engines. Is he counting on fear, or is he dangerously miscalculating the resolve of a nation that has previously shown its threshold for intervention? As the militaries stand poised on the brink of confrontation, questions loom: what will the next move be? Previously, we saw how the U.S. government dismissed Nicolas Maduro's leadership as illegitimate, labeling his regime a dangerous cartel. Now, feeling cornered and under immense pressure, Maduro made a daring move that shocked many. On September 4, he ordered two Venezuelan F-16 fighters to fly dangerously close to a powerful U.S. Navy warship lurking in the Caribbean Sea, the USS Jason Dunham. This was no ordinary vessel. Named after a Marine hero who sacrificed himself in Iraq, the Jason Dunham is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, one of the most lethal warships afloat. It can unleash a deadly barrage of missiles and torpedoes against threats from the sea, air, and land. Over the course of the day, these two F-16s performed not just one, but two flybys near the warship, an act captured and later verified by the U.S. Department of Defense. Meanwhile, some Venezuelan media tried to pass off unrelated footage as proof of these maneuvers, but those clips were quickly debunked. What's truly striking is the bitter irony of Venezuela trying to intimidate America using jets built in the very United States. It's a glaring reminder of how drastically relations have deteriorated. Let's rewind to May 1982, when Caracas and Washington still had friendly ties. Back then, Venezuela became the first South American nation to legally purchase and operate F-16s, also known as Vipers. For over 20 years, Venezuela was the only country on the continent to fly these jets, long before Chile and Argentina acquired their own. Under the Peace Delta program, Venezuela received 16 single-seat F-16s and 8 two-seater F-16Bs between 1983 and 1985. At the time, these jets were the pride of Venezuela's Air Force, cutting-edge machines that replaced older French Mirage fighters. The American government also supplied 150 AIM-9L/P-4 Sidewinder missiles, infrared-guided weapons that significantly boosted Venezuela's aerial firepower. Yet, the question lingers: how did these once strong ties unravel so completely that Venezuela now uses American warplanes to provoke the United States? And what risks did Maduro take by sending those jets so close to a warship capable of obliterating them with ease? As the sun set over the Caribbean Sea, the air grew thick with tension. The deafening roar of jet engines sliced through the sky. Somewhere on the deck of the Jason Dunham, sailors watched warily, fingers twitching near controls. Was this just a show of bravado, or the first spark on the edge of a dangerous conflict? The answer hangs in the balance, waiting to ignite. Previously, we saw how Venezuela proudly flew F-16 fighter jets, known as Vipers, starting in the 1980s, becoming the only South American nation with such advanced aircraft for decades. These jets replaced older French models and marked a leap in Venezuela's military power. But what happened next would change everything. Back in the early 1990s, Venezuela's Vipers weren't just symbols of strength, they made their mark in conflict. During a 1992 attempted military coup against President Carlos Andrés Pérez, loyalist pilots soared into the sky in these powerful jets. They claimed multiple victories, including downing an OV-10 Bronco flown by revolutionary rebels tied to Hugo Chavez. The Vipers proved their worth in battle. By the mid-1990s, Venezuela planned to expand and upgrade its F-16 fleet, seeking stronger engines and additional planes. Washington greenlit these moves by 1997, signaling a continuing military partnership. Yet, the political winds shifted dramatically. When Hugo Chavez rose to power in 1999, the country's relations with the United States deteriorated fast. Instead, Caracas looked eastward, building ties with China and Russia. In response, the U.S. slapped Venezuela with a strict arms embargo starting in 2006, renewed every year since. Chavez even threatened to sell Venezuela's remaining F-16s to Iran, a bold act of defiance against Washington. Fast forward to the present day, Hugo Chavez's legacy has passed to Nicolas Maduro, who took control in 2013. But far from calming tensions, the situation has spiraled. Maduro faces accusations of rigging elections and collaborating with illicit cartels. Human rights abuses and economic collapse have struck Venezuela hard, pushing millions to flee their homeland. Yet, through all this turmoil, Venezuela still clings to some of those original F-16 jets it received 4 decades ago. How has this old fleet managed to survive amid sanctions, embargoes, and widespread decay? And why would Maduro dare to risk flying these aging relics near powerful U.S. Navy warships? A deeper look reveals a shocking contradiction. Jets originally purchased from the United States are now tools in a dangerous game of brinkmanship against the very country that sold them. Could this desperate show of force backfire catastrophically for Venezuela? Stay tuned. Next, we uncover how these jets, once pride of the nation, now fly as symbols of defiance in a lethal geopolitical struggle. Previously, we saw how Maduro's grip on Venezuela deepened after 2013, plunging the nation into chaos. Accusations of rigged elections and ties to drug cartels fueled a growing humanitarian crisis. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans fled their homeland, escaping economic collapse and turmoil. Yet, amid all this upheaval, Venezuela clings stubbornly to a relic of its past power, its aging fleet of F-16 fighter jets. Imagine the scent of hot jet fuel mixing with the dusty air in Maracay, where these warbirds still rest. These F-16s, delivered over 40 years ago, carry the weight of decades. Time has eroded their strength, and with no fresh support from the United States for years, keeping them airborne is a monumental task. The U.S. stopped sending spare parts long ago. So how does a nation under sanctions keep these complex machines flying? Rumors swirl that Venezuelan forces have turned to the black market, sourcing critical components in shadowy deals. Even more surprising are whispers of Israeli involvement. Caracas reportedly modified its F-16s to launch Israeli Python 4 air-to-air missiles. Israeli-made Lightning navigation systems and targeting pods have also found their way into Venezuelan hands. There's talk of precision-guided weapons from Israel too, though these reports remain unconfirmed. The remaining jets are stationed near Caracas, in the El Libertador district of Maracay. Here, Grupo Aéreo de Casa 16, known as Los Dragones, commands these fighters. But this once formidable fleet has shrunk dramatically. Flight Global's 2024 data reveals a mere handful remain, 3 single-seat F-16As and just 1 two-seat F-16B. Meanwhile, Venezuela's Air Force favors Russian Su-30 Mk-2V flanker multirole fighters. Between 2006 and 2008, 24 of these advanced jets arrived, boasting capabilities far beyond the aging American fighters. So why would Venezuela still risk sending these old F-16s on a provocative mission near a powerful U.S. warship? The answer lies in desperation and symbolism. These jets are not just weapons, they are a statement. Yet, the United States did not respond with silence. The Department of Defense swiftly condemned the flyovers. Their statement was clear and sharp. Today, 2 Maduro regime military aircraft flew near a U.S. Navy vessel. What happened next? Why would Venezuela take such a dangerous gamble? The stage was set for a confrontation that could spiral beyond mere posturing. The question lingers, was this a calculated risk, or a reckless mistake that could deepen Venezuela's isolation? The tension crackled like static in the humid Caribbean air. What price would Maduro pay for this bold defiance? A tense encounter unfolded recently over international waters, where Venezuelan fighter jets boldly approached a U.S. Navy warship engaged in anti-narcotics operations. This brazen act was no mere coincidence, it was a deliberate provocation aimed at disrupting a focused campaign against drug traffickers operating near Venezuela's coast. The United States responded swiftly, condemning the maneuver as a serious interference with vital counterterrorism efforts. The U.S. Department of Defense made its position unmistakably clear. They warned the cartel-backed Venezuelan regime against any further attempts to block or obstruct military operations designed to stem the flow of illegal narcotics. The message was firm but restrained, emphasizing that such provocations would not be tolerated. But what happens when words alone don't deter such bold moves? The American leadership left little room for doubt. When questioned about Venezuela's next possible step, the then-president delivered a stark warning. He voiced no tolerance for risky or hostile maneuvers near U.S. forces. His words carried a chilling undertone: any aircraft putting American personnel in harm's way would face severe consequences. He even turned to his top defense officials and military commanders, entrusting them with the authority to make critical decisions should Venezuelan jets continue to act dangerously. The message to Maduro's pilots was blunt and unmistakable: flying recklessly near U.S. vessels could lead to being shot down. This tense standoff revealed just how miscalculated Venezuela's show of force truly was. Far from cowing U.S. forces, it only ignited a stronger American response. Within a day of the flybys, the United States dramatically escalated its military presence in the region. A fleet of 10 cutting-edge F-35 Lightning II fighters was dispatched to an airbase in Puerto Rico, reinforcing operations against the cartels and signaling a powerful message to Caracas. The F-35 is no ordinary warplane. Powered by the Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine, it boasts unmatched speed and agility, capable of flying at speeds exceeding Mach 1.6. Its advanced stealth technology and devastating firepower make it a dominant player in modern aerial warfare. The contrast couldn't be starker: Venezuela's aging jets, relics of a bygone era, facing off against one of the world's most sophisticated fighter aircraft. As the sun set over the South Caribbean Sea, the stakes had never been higher. Venezuela's gamble to flaunt strength with aging F-16s had backfired spectacularly, pushing the U.S. to bring out its most formidable assets. The Caribbean skies were charged with tension, but the question hung in the air: would Venezuela risk escalating this dangerous game further, or would it retreat into the shadows? The answer remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: the U.S. will not tolerate provocations near its forces. The stage is set for a high-stakes drama, where every move could tip the balance toward conflict or uneasy calm. The world watches, breath held, as these two nations play a deadly game of brinkmanship amid the turquoise waves. The battle against drug cartels has pushed military technology to new heights. Consider the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II, often called the world's top fighter jet. Its heart is the Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine, the most powerful jet engine ever built. This beast can reach speeds of Mach 1.6, more than 1,200 miles per hour, nearly 2,000 kilometers per hour. Each F-35 costs about $85 million, a price that reflects its cutting-edge design. It blends unmatched agility, stealth capabilities, and heavy firepower, making it a deadly tool for a vast range of missions. Now, compare the F-35 to the older F-16. Although the F-16 is a capable dogfighter, it simply can't compete with the F-35's advanced technology. The F-35 is sleeker, stealthier, and packed with next-level systems that put it leagues ahead. This contrast mirrors the bigger picture of military power between Venezuela and the United States. The U.S. military, by far the strongest on Earth, dwarfs Venezuela's forces. Its defense budget outstrips every other country's, and decades of investment have crafted a military machine unparalleled in strength, skill, and technology. Whether on land, sea, or in the air, the U.S. commands the battlefield with superior gear, state-of-the-art vehicles, and elite troops. Even formidable rivals like China and Russia fall short in many ways. So, when Venezuela tries to flex its military muscle, the attempt is almost symbolic, more show than substance. For every Venezuelan move, the U.S. counters with tenfold power. Picture this: Venezuela sends up a couple of F-16s. The U.S. responds by deploying 10 F-35s. But the chess game doesn't stop there. The U.S. has also taken a significant political step, ending the temporary protected status for many Venezuelans living within its borders. This decision came just a day before Venezuela's provocative fighter jet flybys near a U.S. warship, signaling that the pressure on Venezuela is mounting on multiple fronts. What does this mean for Venezuela's leadership? Is this a desperate show of defiance, or a dangerous gamble that could backfire spectacularly? The next move could change everything. In the previous chapter, we saw the mounting tensions as the United States began scaling back protections for Venezuelans living on its soil, signaling a shift in policy that hinted at harsher measures ahead. This shift set the stage for escalating conflict, just days before Venezuela's bold military provocation with its fighter jets. On September 3, the Department of Homeland Security announced the end of the temporary protective status for Venezuelan nationals residing in the U.S. This status, granted in 2021, has shielded many from deportation amid the chaos at home. But now, the government declared this protection would cease by November 7, 2025. The reasoning? A tangled mix of concerns over national security, economic interests, and immigration policy. The message was clear: the U.S. no longer sees it as beneficial to allow Venezuelans to remain temporarily. This move sent shockwaves through the already tense atmosphere. Just a day later, Venezuela's daring flyover of a U.S. Navy warship amplified the drama, inflaming a situation that was already volatile. U.S. leaders, including former President Donald Trump, issued stern warnings that the drug cartels operating in Venezuela were in the crosshairs. Reports suggest that the U.S. is seriously considering a range of military actions, not just targeting traffickers at sea, but possibly launching precision strikes deep inside Venezuelan territory. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's words echoed this grim prospect. He vowed to confront cartels wherever they are, hinting that the next moves could be both swift and ruthless. Could the U.S. be preparing to dismantle cartel strongholds and smuggling routes within Venezuela's borders? The very idea sends a chill through Caracas. This mounting pressure may force cracks within Venezuela's own ranks. Some analysts speculate that cartel factions might see removing President Nicolas Maduro as their best option to survive the storm, an ironic twist, considering Maduro's own fears of regime change. Meanwhile, Maduro himself is doubling down, pledging to deploy thousands of troops to critical coastal regions like Zulia's Guajira area and the Paraguana Peninsula in Falcon. His defense minister confirmed this military buildup, underscoring how the government is trying to tighten control over notorious drug routes. The smell of gunpowder seems to hang thick over the Caribbean, and the distant roar of fighter jets slicing through the humid air is a haunting reminder of just how fragile the balance of power has become. What will come next? Will Venezuela's provocations push the U.S. into a direct confrontation? Or will this escalating standoff spiral into something even darker, dragging the entire region into chaos? The answers remain shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing is clear: the conflict is far from over, and the stakes have never been higher. The battle over Venezuela's southern coast just escalated, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Imagine thousands of troops deployed across key borderlands and islands, positioned to choke off drug trafficking routes that ripple all the way to the United States. This surge isn't just a routine military shuffle. It's a direct challenge to anyone who dares interfere in Venezuela's affairs. Recently, Venezuela shifted gears dramatically. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino announced a massive troop buildup, sending about 25,000 soldiers to critical areas: Guajira in Zulia State, the Paraguana Peninsula in Falcon, the states of Sucre and Delta Amacuro, and the island of Nueva Esparta. This is more than double what was there before, a clear sign the government is girding itself for something serious. Padrino's words were fierce and unmistakable. In a social media post echoing like a thunderclap, he made one thing abundantly clear: nobody is coming here to clean up after us. Nobody will tread on this soil and do what we must. The message? Venezuela intends to handle its problems on its own terms. Foreign boots on their beaches? Not welcome. Behind the scenes, Caracas is also counting on a powerful ally, China. The connection runs deep and lucrative. Since 2007, China has sunk billions, about $67 billion, into Venezuela, funding everything from mining projects to housing, and even communication satellites. China buys vast quantities of Venezuelan oil, keeping the country afloat amid economic chaos and a currency in freefall. Yet, cooperation has its limits. Though Beijing loudly condemns any violations of sovereignty or threats from abroad, especially vocal against America's aggressive naval moves in the Caribbean, it remains cautious. High-stakes conflict with the United States, be it military escalation or deep confrontation, is not a guaranteed path China wants to tread. Support, yes; full-blown involvement, no. The tension hums in the air like an electric storm. The Southern Caribbean has become a hotbed where geopolitical ambitions, drug wars, and fragile alliances collide. As Venezuela scrambles to tighten control over its coastlines and pushes this military surge, the question hangs heavy: will this daring gamble stabilize the nation, or plunge it deeper into a dangerous spiral? And what exactly is lurking beyond the horizon in this unfolding saga? The sea whispers and the wind carries far more than salt; it carries the weight of nations on edge. What comes next could change everything. Previously, we saw China's official stance opposing any foreign interference in Venezuela, calling for respect towards sovereignty and peace. Yet, since then, Beijing has remained noticeably silent. With America intensifying its crackdown on drug cartels near Venezuela, China seems to be stepping back, possibly to avoid being dragged into a dangerous conflict far from its core interests. The United States' aggressive campaign has rattled Caracas. Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, once shielded by allies and economic ties, now faces mounting pressure. His grip on power looks increasingly fragile as cartel networks are targeted relentlessly. The looming question is, how far will Maduro go to defend his regime and those who support it? Will he risk everything in a desperate gamble? While China has pumped billions into Venezuela over the years, funding infrastructure projects, mining, and oil deals, it may hesitate to escalate matters. Beijing's priority lies elsewhere, and provoking a direct clash with the US and Latin America could prove too costly. This quiet from China leaves Maduro isolated and vulnerable. The tension has pushed Maduro to bolster his military presence along key coastal regions, sending thousands of troops to block drug routes. But can these moves protect him from the fallout? The US has made clear that cartel operations anywhere will not be tolerated. The line between fighting crime and confronting a regime is blurring fast. The standoff now feels like a powder keg ready to explode. Venezuela's future hangs by a thread, and the dark shadow of cartel influence looms larger than ever. Is Maduro preparing for open conflict, or is this just a high-stakes game of brinkmanship? The world watches, waiting for the next move. Stay tuned, because this saga has only just begun, and the next chapter might shock everyone. What happens when desperation meets military might? Will Venezuela's skies roar with defiance, or will a new power emerge from the chaos? The answers could reshape an entire region.